Okay, so scale weight and why it shouldn't be your only measure. Now, a few of you have had a problem with this one, so we're just trying to clarify this a little bit more. When it comes to fat loss is obviously, there isn't a key element of it is that if you are losing fat, it is fat weight, so therefore the weight on the scales should be going down. So therefore weighing yourself weekly is a measurement factor that we do incorporate. However, only weighing yourself is actually a detriment, because sometimes this fluctuation can have a negative side effect, and not understanding why this has happened is what often makes people go wrong, or then put it in the fuck it bucket and obviously go the other way. So as you may notice now or realise, that I ask for at least pictures, if not pictures and measurements. Now, in an ideal world, you should do all three. So weight, pictures, measurements, that's the ideal. But the bare minimum, I'd say, is weight and then one of the other two. Again, I'm more of a fan of pictures because it's visual and it's a lot easier and quicker to look at it, because measurements can often be skewed a little bit, because if you measure it in the slightly different places it was before, or for example, if you had a leg workout the day before, then of course your legs would look a bit bigger or measure a bit bigger. So we're just going to discuss the main things to consider when you're weighing yourself. So when you weigh yourself, your variables have to be exactly the same. So that's why I always say is you wake up, so because you've been fasted overnight, you haven't drunk any water, ideally you want to have a bowel movement. So again, you'll have a bowel movement. That's going to make a difference as to what the physical weight on the scales is going to be, because you're going to excrete obviously waste. And then if you have a good wholesome diet and you're drinking enough fluids on a day-to-day basis, then from a weekly perspective, your toiletry habits should be regular. When your toilet habits are regular, then we can almost take this measurement as a little bit more accurate. So that's why after the bowel movement it's important. And if it is different, so one day you do and the next week you don't, then it's something to factor in if the weight is different. Then when you jump on the scales, it needs to be really the same day and the same time. So again, if I was to wake up, it's normally going to be set, between 6 and 7. So therefore, it's normally going to be about 15 minutes after I wake up that I'm going to weigh in. So it's generally going to be 7:15 in the morning. Now this ensures that, again, if you treat your weekend any different, then it's going to have a difference on that. Your fluids, your sleep, all these factors have a difference. Now let's work our way through these different factors. So we've already gone through bowel and obviously waste. You then have to think about fluids. So again, if you've had a lot of fluids, different to what you would normally, then either if you're dehydrated or you've hydrated very well, this would have effect on your overall water and electrolyte balance. If your water and electrolyte balance, this can be affected then by your foods. So if you, for example, ate out on the weekend and you ate something saltier or a little bit more processed than you would normally, then that can potentially make a difference as to what water is then retained. If water is retained, then you're going to have a different weight on the scales. Secondly to that, your food. So when you have a good food plan that's good wholesome food, and less of the sort of salty man-made crap that you might buy, then overall your like I said, your water and your sodium levels should be quite consistent. However, if you ate out, for example, on the Saturday night or the Sunday night, let's say you went to somewhere like Zizzi's, you had a big garlic pizza bread and you had a big pasta or pizza for your main, then you had maybe a pint or a wine with it, and then let's say maybe you had a dessert, a typical weekend thing that someone might do. The difference is if your carbohydrate intake was increased to that, what would be your normal average, then per gram of carbohydrates you can pull in an extra 4 grams of water. Well, it's 3 to 5, but say 4 on average. So then, for example, let's say your normal carbohydrate intake should be 100 grams a day, and you are generally on that Monday to Friday. But let's say you go out on Saturday and you go out for dinner and you overeat, and again it's saltier for taste because you're in a restaurant, and let's say your intake hits in the region of 300 grams of carbs for your day. Let's say your Sunday was the same and it was say 200. You're in essence the 300 day, you're 200 gram over and you're 100 gram over on the Sunday. That's 300 extra grams of carbohydrates that you have consumed that would be converted into muscle glycogen. That then goes into the cell, and then it also pulls in that extra weight from the water. So again, if you then think if that was 300 grams, and let's say it's 5 gram, you know, to make the equation easier, then you're looking at 1.5, so you know, 1,500 grams extra because of that food, if I've done the maths quickly. So then obviously if you then haven't really done any activity, you haven't burned or expended that extra muscle glycogen, so therefore it's still sat in your cell in your muscles. Again, it might make a difference to your bowel habits and what's also in your stomach and digestion, but overall then that's made a difference to physically what you're going to weigh on the scales. So this can have a big factor. So this is why a constant food plan makes more sense when someone follows it to the letter, because then you know that you're reducing that variable. So that's food, that's water. Then look at if you are stressed. So for example, if you've had a really stressful weekend, or you've woke up stressed, maybe you've got kids and you're getting annoyed at them, and your cortisol levels are raising. Again, cortisol can have an effect on water retention. So this would therefore then have an effect on your overall scale weight. You've then also got, like we talked about in the other video, is about sleepless nights. So again, cortisol will be raised if you've had a sleepless night, you haven't had the right recovery. If you haven't had the right recovery, then the waste hasn't obviously been processed properly. Toxins haven't been processed properly, so therefore your weight might be different. This could be off the back end of a workout. Again, if you've had a workout, then you actually want to create a stress, you want to break down muscle tissue, but this is an acute, small, you know, short-term response that you're breaking down muscle tissue to rebuild better and stronger. And again, this can have an effect on the retention of water and the look of obviously how you look. So if you've had a really good big heavy workout on the Saturday or Sunday, then this could again have an effect on your weight on the Monday. So if you move your workouts around in the week, that could make a difference on your weight. So then when you put all these variables, and it's not necessarily just one in its own, it could be 2 or 3, it's trying to understand. That's why if your weight wasn't going in the right direction, then that's where we ask those questions as to what could be affecting it. If we can dig to the bottom of it and more or less find out what it could be, again, you're never going to know exactly, and this is where people might lose their head. So if you lose your head and you go do something stupid, by start eating stupidly, you know, or go off plan because you're feeling a little bit down, you know, down and disheartened by your weight, then again, you could have been absolutely on track, but it might have been an acute response that will be going away in a day or two, and you'll be back to where you were. So the importance of sticking to a plan, unless it's actually plan changes, is what makes the difference between a successful transformation and not, especially in a short time frame. But if you paired those changes in weights with a picture or measurements, and then on trend they were going down or you were looking better or your clothes were looking better, then whether or not the weight fluctuation was there, it explains that you're going in the right direction if your other measurements and variables are right and they look good and positive. Whereas if your measurements look bad, your picture looks bad, your weight looks bad, and then again we can't find a solution, then it's a question of almost, again, looking to go again almost another week for most people, just to check that it isn't an anomaly. And then again, if the measurements are bad, the picture is bad, and the weight is bad again on the second week, then it's where adjustments would definitely need to be made. But you need to be smart about how you make an adjustment rather than making it, you know, like a knee-jerk reaction too quick. It's understanding what's going on with the body and why the weight on the scales isn't the be-all and end-all. And there are a few of you that have actually had this result, that your weight may not have shifted and gone down, but visibly you look a hell of a lot leaner, a hell of a lot tighter, a lot healthier. There's a lot of different factors. So I've had to obviously go over that a couple of times lately with a few of you. So it's understanding this video and the variables, and then if you're not sure of something, being able to self-assess yourself as to why your weight might not have changed is key. But for those of you that haven't trained to the intensity that you need to for this, or you're new to training, then you will be getting what's called a golden egg scenario in my books. You might be gaining lean tissue and actually dropping fat weight. This is very unlikely for someone that's been doing it a long time. It gets less and less, but for those of you that are new to it, you kind of get that golden egg scenario, which is what everyone searches for really. So that's where if you look visibly leaner, your measurements look better, but your weight is the same, then really you've just got the best result you possibly could have had. So all you've got to look at is everything and not just a snapshot of just what your weight is alone. So always remember that when you weigh yourself in, that isn't the be all and end all, and remember to compare it all, and if you're not sure, always ask. But any questions, fire them over and we can go through it.